Right, so today I'm going into the book of Genesis, chapter 5. Yes, you see, because of modern technology nowadays, you can just tap on your phone and read it from your phone. So it's all about Adam's descendants. Verse 1. So this is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, or mankind, in the likeness of God, male and female created he them. Some people say God's a man, some people say God is a woman. Now, for me, God is a spirit. God can be anything, as you'll see throughout the entire Bible. So verse 2, male and female he created them and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day that they were created. This is the KJV Bible. Yeah. Verse 3. And Adam lived 130 years, and then he had his son in his own likeness, after his own image, and he called his name Seth, S-E-T-H, which of course Seth means and the anointed one. So after Cain killed his brother Abel, then God allowed Adam to have another son called Seth. And we'll see what happened later on. So verse 4. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years. So Adam lived another 800 years after he had his son Seth. And after that time he had other sons and daughters which are not mentioned in the Bible. You know? So altogether Adam lived 930 years. And then he died. Verse 6. Seth, which is Adam's son, he lived 105 years, and then his son Enosh was born, and he lived 807 years and had other sons and daughters. So altogether Seth lived 912 years before he died. Now I notice the spelling in this Bible is slightly different from the King James, but I'm gonna carry on. And Enosh lived 90 years, and then he had his son Canaan. And after that he lived, after he had Canaan, he 815 years, and then he had other sons and daughters. So altogether Enosh, he lived 905 years, and then he died. So you see the genealogy there, then the lifespan. People were living long time, numerous years. Yes, so verse 15. And Mahalalel lived 65 years, and then he had his son Jared, and then he lived another 830 years, and then he had sons and daughters too. So altogether Mahalalel lived 895 years before he died. Jared lived 162 years, and then he had his son Enoch. Now this is very important. Enoch, after Jared lived, after he had Enoch, he lived another 800 years, and then he had other sons and daughters. So altogether Jared lived 962 years before he died. Awesome. So now Enoch, which is a very important figure in the Bible, and you'll see why later on. Enoch lived 65 years, and then he had his son Methuselah. I'm laughing because my dad used to say his name was Methuselah. This man's he is the longest liver in the Bible. And Enoch walked with God after he had Methuselah 300 years. So imagine that after he having his son at age 65, he walked with God 300 years. And then he had other sons and daughters, and altogether Enoch lived 365 days. Sorry, 365 years. Wow, amazing. So Enoch walked with God, and then he was not, for God took him. How awesome is that? So God took him. In other words, he didn't die. Verse 25. Yes, so verse 25 it says, and Methuselah lived 187 years before he had his son Lamech. And after he had his son Lamech, 782 years. After that time, he had other sons and daughters. Yeah? So after 187 years old, he had his son Lamech. And Methuselah lived, after he had Lamech, 782 years before he had other sons and daughters. So that's a very long time wow, that's amazing. And all the days of Methuselah years were 969. And then he died. That's the longest man to ever live those amount of years. And Lamech lived 182 years and had a son, and he called his name Noah. He's saying that this name means, this same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands. Remember, God had cursed the earth, cursed the ground earlier, because Cain had killed Abel. So now Noah will bring comfort and comfort them from their toil because of the ground which the Lord had cursed. Yeah? Verse 30. Lamech lived after he had Noah 595 years. And he had other sons and daughters. Their names were not mentioned. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years. The 777. And then he died. And Noah was 500 years old. And Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And that's where it ends. That's where chapter 5 ends. With Noah and his 3 sons. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Amazing. So I'm just going to elaborate on this now in a little while, yeah? Now I'm just expanding on what I've just read. I'm just imagining that during these long lifespans, all these patriarchs had the opportunity to pass down their faith to their children and their children's children. You know, Jared, who lived 962 years, when he was born, the world was already showing signs of spiritual decline that would eventually lead to a flood, as we will see later on, you know. So men were living incredible long lives during that period. Some people say it's not figuratively, but how do we know? We don't know. I trust that it's literally, because as we read and we read further in the Bible, when the children of wherever they came from, they were erecting the Tower of Babel. And God confused the language and said, well, as of now, people are not going to live any more than 120 years. And God changed the time, you know. So in my generation, I've seen how life change from such a place of innocence to pure wickedness. I've seen it. I've seen people cut people head off. When I was in exile, there was a woman who just cut the woman head off for no reason at all because of envy or jealousy or something. You understand me? So all these names that I've read, they all have meaning. Adam mean man, Seth mean anointed one, and so forth. You know? And Enoch mean dedicated or initiated the sort of first being. In those days names carried weight and meant something. You understand? Names in the Bible speak of destiny and purpose. You understand? So when it come to a man like Enoch, his name was already predestined. He was destined for greatness. You know, his name declared is a declaration. His name is a declaration that he's set apart from the ordinary pursuits in life for spiritual purposes, ready to take and to undertake God's divine mission. So those descendants of Seth, they continue to call upon the name of the Lord. That was like a spiritual revival at the time. You can imagine living in a world of darkness and sin and misery, a moral decline, violence, misery throughout the whole region, and then this man dedicated, he was determined that he was going to walk with God no matter what. He was more concerned with his purpose than earthly pleasure. Imagine. And then at that time, it's like a contrast between Cain's and Seth's generation, because Cain was a murderer. He went off away from God's presence. He had no more involvement with God because of the wickedness that he did. So with Seth now, it was like the beginning of a holy lineage that would carry God's message throughout that generations. And it's also evident in 1 Corinthians 15:48, where it talks about the mission of God's people. But I'll have to have a look at that later on. Yeah, man, so violence was increasing throughout the earth at that time, and Enoch was among the remnant of God's faithful people. Yeah. And can you imagine living in a generation where there's pure wickedness, and then this man, he purposed it in his heart and said, I'm not going to be like the others. I'm going to faithfully walk with God. And in consideration of the fact that Adam lost the privilege, Adam was supposed to walk with God, but he lost that privilege. And then Enoch came. Enoch is the seventh line from Adam, and 7 in the Bible have a significance. Yeah, man, the 7th generation all a special significance throughout the Bible, because 7 is God's special number. Yeah. So, even though Enoch was born in a world of wickedness, he carried the torch and the flame for God. He was more concerned about his eternal state than his earthly state. You understand? Because Adam lived 930 years, which was enough to see his generation and to see the world change from innocence to wickedness. And it's just, yeah, God have a plan for his people throughout the lineage and throughout these tribes. You can see how God, it's no mistake. It's there for a reason, because all these names have meaning. And it's like it go from Adam to Noah. Imagine that. chapter 5 end with Noah and his sons. Isn't that amazing? And even more significant, in the book of Jude, that Enoch was actually a prophet. He was a chosen prophet of righteousness. God chose him to bring God's message to the generation. And in Jude 14, I'm just going to have a look at Jude 14. I'm going to read that. Now, the book of Jude is the last book before you reach Revelation. And in verse 14, it says, Now Enoch, the seventh from Adam, that means the seventh generation, prophesied about these men also, saying, Behold, the Lord come with 10,000 of his saints, to execute judgment on all, and to convict all who are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So you see, no sin will go unpunished. No sin will go unpunished, no matter what you see the wickedness that is happening in life. This man Enoch set the stage to see that when you walk with God, your future is certain and God will make sure that you are safe. He never see death. This man didn't see any death. God took him after 365 years in this lifetime. And then again, when I just read that verse, it just gives the confirmation that the Lord is coming back to establish righteousness and peace on the earth. God patience have limit. God is slow. God is not slow concerning his promise. It tells us in 2 Peter 3. But he set aside a day of reckoning, that he's surely coming back. And God's plan has unfolded in this generation, because most of these scriptures, they are prophecy, Yeah, man, because after Methuselah, walking with God became more intense, because remember now, Enoch had Methuselah when he was 65, and then he walked with God 300 years. So that would, and then shortly after Methuselah died, they really had the flood. You understand? So there were 3 centuries communion between Enoch and God. 3 centuries. 300 years. Isn't that amazing? So just to recap, Adam and Eve had their son Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. God restored Seth, who it was the beginning of a holy mission on earth with Seth, because from Seth came a long line of men that began to call upon the name of the Lord. So these men, they passed on their faith to their children and kept God's promises that he made to their ancestors. And like I said earlier, all the names have meanings. Adam mean mankind, Seth mean appointed, Enosh mean mortal or frail, and Cain mean acquired. When Eve had her first child, she said, I acquired a man from the Lord. Jared mean descent, that mean to go down, and he lived 962 years. But his son Enoch name mean Enoch. I forget what Enoch mean, but I'll have to come back to that. But I know that Enoch was the 7th generation, which holds special significance throughout the Bible. It's God, it means completion. Like in the first part of Genesis, where it says God rests on the 7th day. So in a roundabout way, Enoch life all the prophetic significance that unlock mysteries about our eternal destiny. It just tells us that if we are faithful, it no matter who doing what, let everybody do what they want to do, as long as your life please God. Because Enoch, he just vanished from the earth through divine translation. It just reveals what it really means to walk with God. There are some biblical scholars that want to put a date on creation. You know, all that genealogy in the Bible, when they said when you work your way back to, they can actually tell you the date of creation. There's a man called Ussher. He was an Irish bishop. He claimed that creation started in 4004 BC at nightfall, you know. And according to them, the age of the earth is 4.6 billion years. And the universe is 13.7 billion years. It doesn't matter what man say. I know that there are 7 dispensations of time. And we are living in the period of grace. You understand? We are in the church age. You understand? So, we are descended from Adam, of course. So, when Adam was born, he wasn't a baby. God called Adam mankind. You understand? So, as a part of the human race, our genealogy is the timeline. If you trace it back, I don't think it's impossible, but I can't say for sure that the creation started 4,004 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, so just to wrap up what I'm saying, the names of all these people from Adam to Noah, their names were not chosen randomly. They were declarations of faith. And every time when you call that child's name, it was like, it's like you're referring to God's character. And just like how this one man in history vanished from existence through divine translation, God have a plan for his people just the same. If long as we walk closely with God, he will take wherever he is, there we will be also, as long as we walk in fellowship and do our part. So that's the end of chapter 5. So I'm going to go into chapter 6 now. And there are some references from 2 Kings chapter 2 about Elijah. He didn't see death. He was translated by divine translation. So God have a plan for his people. We don't know. We don't know what God's plan is. To each his own. Everybody's existence in this world is different. A lot of people are dying young, some are dying middle age and whatever. But only God knows about our existence and our final destination. Alright? Keep subscribing. Keep watching. God bless you.